Welcome back to our hero story. So what have we learnt so far? We've learnt that set against this political turmoil, we have a nation that's looking for a saviour, looking for hope, looking for a way out. And we have a faithful man, Zechariah, who has served all of his life as a priest. He's a faithful man who's now old. And every year, twice a year, he's gone up to the temple and he's served faithfully. And now, in his old age, he gets this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to step into, offer the sacrifice, a pinnacle of his career in the most sort of holy of settings. And we know that he's a priest who has been faithful all his life. We know in our passage that it says he's righteous in the eyes of God. In other words, this is a faithful man who has followed the law, all those commands, all those regulations. Remember, there's a thou shalt not for every day of the year. And Zechariah has served faithfully all these years. He is a man of the law who's desired to be right with God and hungry for God, who served as a priest. And he's known nothing else all his life apart from chasing after God and following the law. And here you have a nation of Israel who have got the temple worship system, and they've followed all these rules, all this religious system for centuries. All of these things being symbolic and representing other things, the aroma, the sacrifice. And into all of this setting, suddenly an angel appears and answers both Zechariah and Israel's prayers with a son. But we also learn that when the angel appears and promises Zechariah this answer to everybody's prayers, he says to him that you will call him John. Now, we might not immediately realise some of the significance of this, but the meaning of the name John is God is gracious. And remember that grace is getting what we don't deserve. Grace is the exact opposite to the law. If justice is getting what we deserve and mercy is not getting what we deserve, grace is getting what we don't deserve. So I want you to imagine the scene. Here is a priest, a faithful priest who's chased after God all of his life, a man of the law who's now being told that God's answer is grace. How mind-blowing is that? How incredible is that to sort of challenge everything he knows? And if we just think about that for a moment, this has sort of three things. First of all, there's a natural answer. We see that this sense of God's grace is a natural answer to Zechariah and Elizabeth, giving them something that goes beyond their dreams. There's a sense of God's grace to them personally, in the natural. But there's a deeper significance because the nation has been living under the law for hundreds and hundreds of years, looking for hope. And here is Zechariah, a man of the law, who's being told God's answer is grace. What's happening here is that God is challenging everything that's familiar. He's changing the very nature of his relationship with humanity. And he's taking a nation of law and a history of law and a man of the law, and he's now opening up the kingdom of grace. So here we have a change in the dynamic. The setting for our hero's birth is that God is resetting the clock. He's doing something that's challenging everything that's familiar. Now, God gave the law, so we have to say, okay, the law is good, but it has its limits. And in God's kingdoms, in the sort of the principle of the law is if you break one law, you've broken them all. So not to keep one is not to keep all of them. In other words, there's a sense of sin if we miss the mark. And consequently, there's a need for constant sacrifices, a need to constantly come back and appeal to God for forgiveness. And you need the priest to act as the go-between. Maybe we understand why Paul to the letter in his letter to the Romans, where he says that there's no one righteous, not even one. You know, the law shows us that we can't get it right on our own. But grace opens God's heart for us to be able to have a relationship. Whereas before, our relationship is based on having to come and make atonement and come for forgiveness because the law shows us that we've broken that. Grace opens up a whole new way to live, a whole new sense of God's heart. And Zechariah has the privilege of carrying this new message of grace out to a waiting world.